This story is titled, Gold Digger Mom Stole My Entire College Fund to Fund Her Lifestyle. So I did this, and she is begging now. Hey everyone, we put a lot of time and effort into finding these stories to keep bringing you the best content. If you enjoy what I do, it would mean the world if you hit that subscribe button. Your support really makes all the difference and keeps this journey going strong. Thanks so much for being here with me. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, Hey Reddit, for some context, I'm a 19-year-old college student who still lives at home with my mom. It's not exactly a dream setup, but with how expensive tuition is, it made sense financially. Plus, I've always been kind of a family-first person, even though that doesn't always go both ways in my family. So, here's the thing. I'm broke. Like, working 2 shifts at a diner to barely scrape by kind of broke. Between classes, I spend most of my time busting my butt at work to save for tuition, books, and hopefully, a chance to transfer to a better school next year. My dream is to study business administration at a university that's out of state, somewhere far away from my current situation. My mom, though? She's 50 and spends most of her time dreaming about her next big move. If you ask her, she's got these big ideas that are always just around the corner. But honestly, she's never really followed through on anything. To give you an idea, in the last 5 years, she's tried selling handmade jewelry, flipping furniture, and even running an MLM. Yes, the boss babe kind. Every single time, it's ended in disaster, and she's just shrugged it off like it's no big deal. Now, I know that might sound harsh, but I promise I've been supportive, probably more than I should be. I've given her pep talks, helped her set up Etsy accounts, even taken photos of her crafts for social media. But the problem is, none of her plans ever seem to stick. She's great at starting things, but once the novelty wears off, she loses interest. And guess who's left picking up the pieces when it all falls apart? That would be me. Even though I don't make much, I've always contributed to the household expenses. I pay for groceries, utilities, and even chip in for random things like Wi-Fi or my mom's endless Amazon orders. It's not ideal, but I figured it was only temporary until I could transfer and get out of here for good. Anyway, a few months ago, my mom sat me down for one of her serious talks. She said she had a brilliant idea for a boutique business she wanted to start. She was so excited, going on and on about how this was going to be her breakthrough, and how she'd finally be able to turn our lives around. At first, I was like, okay, cool, I'm glad she's motivated. But then she dropped the bomb. She wanted me to help fund it. Now, let me be clear. I don't have $7,000 just lying around. The only reason I even have that much saved up is because I've been working nonstop since high school. Every single dollar has been squirreled away for my dream of transferring schools. This money isn't just savings, it's my future. But my mom didn't see it that way. She told me that family supports family, and that I should see this as an investment in her potential. She promised she'd pay me back as soon as the business took off, saying I'd get my money back tenfold. I told her I needed to think about it. I mean, on one hand, she is my mom, and I felt this pressure to help her. But on the other hand, I knew her track record. She'd never followed through on anything before. So why would this time be any different? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running the numbers in my head, trying to figure out if I could afford to take this risk. I couldn't. But the guilt was eating away at me. My mom is really good at making you feel like a terrible person if you don't go along with what she wants. She cried, saying this was her last chance to make something of herself, and that I was being selfish for not believing in her. After 2 days of constant pressure, I finally caved. I withdrew the money from my savings account and handed it over to her. She was over the moon, hugging me and calling me her hero. For a brief moment, I thought, maybe this will work. Maybe she'll prove me wrong. Boy, was I wrong. All right, let me back up a bit and give you some background so you can really understand the dynamics here. My mom and I have always had this complicated relationship. Growing up, it was just the two of us. My dad left when I was a baby, so she's been both parent and provider my whole life. To her credit, she worked hard when I was a kid. We never had a lot, but she kept a roof over our heads and food on the table, even if it meant juggling 2 or 3 jobs at a time. Over the years, my mom chased one dream after another. A YouTube channel, a candle-making business, even a stint in an MLM. Every time she started with enthusiasm, but quickly lost interest, leaving behind nothing but debt and excuses. By the time I graduated high school, I'd learned not to get too invested in her projects. I mean, I wanted to support her, but it was hard to take her seriously when she never stuck with anything. Still, she's my mom, and I felt like it was my job to be there for her, even when she made bad choices. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out my own life. I've always been pretty independent, mostly because I had to be. I started working as soon as I was old enough, juggling school and part-time jobs to save for college. My plan was simple: work hard, get good grades, and eventually transfer to a better school where I could really thrive. Living at home was supposed to be a temporary thing. I figured it would save me money while I knocked out my general education classes, and then I'd be out of there. But the reality of living with my mom was a lot more draining than I expected. For one thing, she treated me like her personal assistant. Need groceries? I'd better pick them up after work. House needs cleaning? That's on me too. And don't even get me started on the bills. Even though I was technically a dependent, I was paying for way more than my fair share. At first, I didn't mind too much. I mean, I lived there, so it seemed fair to help out. But as time went on, it became clear that my mom was relying on me way more than she should have been. She wasn't working anymore, so everything from the water bill to the Wi-Fi fell on me. And it wasn't just about money. Emotionally, I felt like I was carrying the weight of her dreams too. Every time one of her projects failed, she'd come to me, crying about how life wasn't fair and how she just needed one lucky break. I'd always try to cheer her up, even when I was exhausted from work or stressed about school. But despite all of that, I still believed in my mom. I wanted to believe that she could make something of herself if she just found the right opportunity. So when she came to me with her boutique idea, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this time will be different. But it wasn't. So a few weeks after I handed over the $7,000, my mom went into full entrepreneur mode. Or at least, that's what she wanted me to believe. She was constantly talking about her boutique, how it was going to be this chic, one-of-a-kind online store that catered to busy moms who want to look fabulous without breaking the bank. She had a Pinterest board filled with outfit ideas, color palettes, and inspirational quotes like, "Dream big or go home." At first, I'll admit, I was cautiously optimistic. She seemed more focused than she had with her other projects. She talked about finding suppliers, building a website, and even renting a storage unit to keep inventory. It sounded promising. But then the cracks started to show. The first red flag was when she decided to buy a business laptop. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand the need for tools to run a business. But instead of getting something practical, she dropped $2,000 on a top-of-the-line MacBook with all the bells and whistles. When I questioned if that was necessary, she waved me off saying, "You've got to spend money to make money." The next thing I noticed was the constant flow of Amazon packages. Every day, there was something new. Clothing samples, fancy hangers, packaging materials with her logo on them, even a $300 label maker. Our tiny living room started to look like a warehouse. I asked her how much she'd spent so far, and she brushed me off with, "It's all part of the investment." I started to worry when I realized she hadn't actually done anything to set up the business itself. There was no website, no official business registration, no marketing plan, just a pile of random stuff she'd bought. Whenever I asked her about it, she'd get defensive and say, "I'm working on it, okay?" These things take time. The breaking point came when I overheard her on the phone with one of her friends. She was talking about how she was planning to use some of the money I'd given her to treat herself for all the hard work she'd been doing. She mentioned booking a spa day and buying a new purse. I confronted her that same night. I told her I was worried that she wasn't using the money the way she'd promised, and that I needed to see some kind of progress. Her reaction? She laughed. She actually laughed in my face and said, "You're acting like I owe you something. Relax, I've got it under control." That was when I realized she didn't see this as a loan at all. To her, it was free money, my money, that she could use however she wanted. Things escalated quickly after that. I started keeping a closer eye on what she was doing, and the more I saw, the angrier I got. She wasn't working on the boutique at all. Most days, she'd sit on the couch scrolling through Instagram or binge-watching some random show on Netflix. If I tried to bring up the business, she'd snap at me, saying I was stressing her out and that Rome wasn't built in a day. I tried to stay calm, but it was impossible. This was my savings, my future, that she was blowing on nonsense. I reminded her over and over that she'd promised to pay me back, but she always had some excuse. "I just need a little more time," she'd say. "Once things get rolling, you'll get every penny back." It wasn't just about the money, though. It was the way she made me feel like I was the bad guy for even bringing it up. She'd say things like, "You don't understand how hard it is to start a business," or, "If you can't trust your own mother, who can you trust?" One day, I found out she had lied about something pretty major. She told me she'd set up a meeting with a potential supplier, but when I asked how it went, she got all cagey. I did some digging and realized she'd never even contacted the supplier. Instead, she'd spent the day at a nail salon. That was the moment I snapped. I told her, flat out, that I wanted my money back. No more excuses, no more delays. I needed the money back in my account, and I needed it now. Her reaction? Pure drama. She started crying, saying I was heartless and selfish, for not supporting her dream. She accused me of being ungrateful for everything she'd done for me over the years, like raising me as a single mom. Then she pulled the ultimate gaslight, claiming we'd never agreed on it being alone in the first place. And that's when she said the words that changed everything. It was a gift. A gift? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her point blank that this was not what we agreed on. I reminded her of the countless times she'd promised to pay me back, but she just rolled her eyes and said, "You're too young to understand how life works." At that point, I realized there was no reasoning with her. She wasn't going to give me my money back, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to. She saw it as her money now, and nothing I said was going to change that. For a few days, I felt completely defeated. I'd worked so hard to save that money, and now it was gone, just like that. I tried to focus on school and work, but it was hard not to feel resentful every time I saw her sitting on the couch, doing nothing to fix the mess she'd created. But then I had an epiphany. I didn't have to put up with this anymore. In the weeks following my mom's "it's a gift" declaration, I hit rock bottom emotionally. I wasn't just mad, I was gutted. That money wasn't just sitting in a jar waiting to be spent. It was the sum total of years of hard work. Every late night shift, every holiday I skipped to work extra hours, every single time I said no to hanging out with friends because I was saving for my future, it was all for nothing. The betrayal wasn't just about the money, though. It was the sheer audacity of my mom pretending like this was normal, like I was somehow the villain for wanting back what was rightfully mine. And to add salt to the wound, she carried on as if nothing had happened. She kept posting on Facebook about her entrepreneurial journey, uploading stock photos of boutique items with captions like, "Dreaming big things." Stay tuned for my next chapter. Meanwhile, there was no chapter. There was no boutique. There wasn't even an attempt. It was all smoke and mirrors, a facade she put up to make herself look good while she drained me dry. I tried to focus on school, but I couldn't shake the anger. Every time I sat down to study, my mind wandered back to that $7,000. I couldn't stop imagining all the things I could have done with it. Moving out, finally transferring to my dream school, or even just giving myself a tiny break from working 50 hours a week. Instead, I was stuck living paycheck to paycheck while my mom treated herself to spa days and takeout. The worst part? She didn't even feel bad. She walked around the house like she was some kind of visionary, talking about how success is right around the corner. Meanwhile, the bills were piling up. I'd overhear her on the phone with her friends, laughing about how she was manifesting abundance while I was struggling to scrape together enough money to pay for textbooks. The resentment started to eat away at me. It wasn't just about getting my money back anymore. It was about making her feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. I wanted her to realize how much she'd screwed me over, and I wanted her to suffer for it. But revenge wasn't as simple as just confronting her again. She'd already shown me that she didn't take me seriously. Every time I brought up the money, she'd dismiss me or twist the narrative to make herself the victim. If I wanted to get even, I needed to be smarter. The first thing I did was take a hard look at my finances. I realized that as long as I was living under her roof, I was trapped. She'd keep taking advantage of me, and I'd keep letting her because I felt obligated to help. I needed to get out, but moving out wasn't cheap, and I didn't have much left in savings after she took the $7,000. So I started working even harder. I picked up extra shifts at my part-time job, staying late every night and working doubles on weekends. It was exhausting, but I didn't have a choice. Every dollar I earned went straight into a secret account that I opened without telling her. At home, I played along like nothing had changed. I didn't want her to suspect that I was planning my escape. Whenever she brought up her boutique, I'd nod and smile, pretending to be supportive even though it made me sick to my stomach. It took me a couple of months, but eventually I saved up enough to cover a security deposit and the first 2 months of rent for a tiny apartment near campus. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that was all that mattered. The night I moved out was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. My mom had gone out to dinner with friends, so I took the opportunity to pack up all my stuff. It didn't take long. I didn't own much beyond some clothes, a laptop, and a few personal items. Before I left, I wrote her a note. I kept it short and to the point. Period. Mom, since you believe that family doesn't owe each other anything, I'm taking that to heart. I'm moving out, and I won't be helping with the bills anymore. Don't contact me unless you're ready to pay me back the $7,000 you owe me. Until then, I wish you the best of luck with your business. Your selfish daughter. I taped the note to the fridge and walked out the door without looking back. At first, it felt amazing. I was finally free. Free from her guilt trips, free from her excuses, and free from the crushing weight of living with someone who clearly didn't value me. My new apartment was small and a little run down, but it felt like a palace compared to the emotional prison I'd just escaped. But the reality of living on my own hit me hard. Rent, utilities, groceries. It all added up fast. My full-time job barely covered the basics, and I had to take out a student loan to pay for my classes. There were nights when I'd sit in my tiny apartment, eating instant noodles and wondering if I'd made a mistake. Meanwhile, my mom was blowing up my phone. At first, she acted like nothing had happened, sending me texts about random stuff like, "What do you want for dinner?" Or "Can you pick up milk on your way home?" When I didn't respond, the messages turned passive-aggressive. "I see you're too busy to talk to your mother." Then, finally, the guilt-tripping started. "I sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you repay me?" I ignored every message. If she wasn't willing to pay me back, then she wasn't worth my time. But ignoring her didn't make the pain go away. I still felt like I'd lost a part of myself, like she'd taken more than just my money. She'd taken my trust, my faith in family, and my belief that she'd ever truly care about me as much as I cared about her. And that's when I decided that getting even wasn't enough. I didn't just want her to feel bad. I wanted her to hurt. The idea for my revenge came to me in the quiet of my apartment one night, as I stared at the stack of overdue bills on my table. My mom had always operated on the assumption that I'd be there to bail her out, whether it was financially, emotionally, or otherwise. She saw me as her safety net, someone she could take advantage of without consequence. But what if I removed that safety net entirely? I knew her weakness. She depended on appearances. My mom was obsessed with how people saw her. In her world, she was the selfless, hardworking single mother who did everything for her ungrateful daughter. But what if I exposed the truth? What if I let everyone in her life see the real her? The manipulator, the liar, the person who stole $7,000 from her own child. I started small. First, I contacted the few friends she still had, the ones she constantly bragged to about her boutique. I casually mentioned that I had moved out because my mom had taken my college savings under the guise of starting a business and then refused to pay me back. I didn't embellish or exaggerate, I just told the truth. The reactions were immediate. One of her friends, who I'd known since I was a kid, actually apologized to me. She said she had no idea my mom had done that and promised to confront her about it. Another friend stopped returning her calls altogether. It was petty, sure, but it felt good to poke holes in the perfect image my mom tried so hard to maintain. Next, I took things online. My mom was big on Facebook, posting motivational quotes, pictures of her work-in-progress boutique, read piles of junk she'd bought, and updates about her journey. So I wrote a post of my own. I didn't name her directly, but it wasn't hard to figure out who I was talking about. I laid out the facts. Period. My mom had taken $7,000 of my hard-earned savings, money I'd been saving for years to transfer schools. She promised it was a loan and swore she'd pay me back, only to later claim it was a gift. She hadn't made a single effort to start her business, instead using the money to fund her own luxuries. I ended the post with this period. I've moved out and cut ties for now, not because I don't love her, but because I refuse to let her take advantage of me any longer. Family is supposed to support each other, not exploit each other. I hope she learns that before it's too late. The post blew up. People shared it, commented on it, and even messaged me privately to offer support. A few people who knew my mom personally reached out to say they were shocked and disappointed in her. Others, strangers mostly, told me they'd gone through similar situations and encouraged me to stay strong. My mom saw the post within hours. She called me, screaming about how I'd humiliated her and ruined her reputation. She said I was destroying the family and that I'd regret it. But for the first time, her words didn't affect me. I wasn't scared of her anymore, and that was just the beginning. I knew my mom was financially struggling without me helping with the bills, so I decided to hit her where it hurt. Remember all those Amazon packages she'd been ordering? The ones she'd put on a credit card in my name without telling me? Yeah, I found out about those when I checked my credit report. At first, I was furious, but then I realized I could use it to my advantage. I reported the charges as fraudulent and filed a police report. I also froze my credit and notified the card company that my mother had been using it without my permission. The fallout was brutal. The card company canceled her account and sent her a notice demanding immediate payment of the balance, over $4,000. She tried to play it off, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but there was no getting around it. Her credit score tanked, and she was forced to pay back every penny. By this point, my mom was desperate. Her boutique dream was dead in the water, her friends were ghosting her, and her finances were in shambles. She started calling me daily, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to angry rants about how I'd ruined her life. I ignored every call. One day, though, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked rough, like she hadn't slept in days. She begged me to let her in, saying she just wanted to talk. Against my better judgment, I opened the door to her tearful face. But this time, I wasn't sure if I could forgive her. What followed was a 2-hour conversation that was equal parts apology and excuse-making. She admitted that she'd messed up, but insisted that she'd only taken the money because she thought it would make our lives better. She cried, saying she missed me and didn't know how to fix things. For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered all the sleepless nights, the stress, and the sheer betrayal I'd felt because of her actions. I told her the truth, that I didn't trust her anymore, and that if she really wanted to fix things, she needed to start by paying me back. All of it. No excuses, no delays. Until then, I couldn't have her in my life. She promised she would, but I wasn't holding my breath. Revenge might not fix everything, but it sure as hell felt good. Thanks for sticking with me through this, Reddit. I'll keep you updated if anything changes, but for now, I'm just trying to move forward. Update. Hey Reddit, I wanted to give you all an update since so many of you commented and messaged me after my original post. First off, thank you for all the support, advice, and even the tough love. It really helped me see things clearly during a pretty dark time. So here's where things stand now. Period. About a week ago, I got a call from an unknown number. I don't usually answer those, but something told me to pick up. Turns out it was my mom. Calling. From jail. Apparently, after I moved out, her financial situation went from bad to worse. Without my help covering the bills, she fell behind on rent, utilities, and pretty much everything else. To make matters worse, she maxed out multiple credit cards, trying to manifest abundance. Read, buy random crap off Amazon, and couldn't keep up with the payments. When the debt collectors came knocking, she tried to ignore them. But here's where things get wild. In a last-ditch effort to fix her situation, my mom got involved in some shady get-rich-quick scheme. I don't have all the details, but from what I've gathered, it involved fraudulent checks and some kind of identity theft. Long story short, she got caught, and now she's facing some serious charges. She called me from jail, crying and begging for my help. She said she needed bail money, $10,000 to be exact, and that I was the only person she could count on. She went on and on about how she'd learned her lesson, how jail had been a wake-up call, and how she was ready to turn her life around. For a split second, I felt a pang of guilt. I mean, this is my mom we're talking about. But then I remembered all the times she manipulated me, took advantage of my kindness, and betrayed my trust. I thought about the $7,000 she stole from me, the sleepless nights, the constant stress, and how she never once truly apologized for any of it. I took a deep breath and told her the truth. I said, "Mom, I hope this really is a wake-up call for you, but I can't help you. Not this time. You need to figure this out on your own." She lost it. She started screaming about how I was abandoning her, and how she sacrificed everything for me as a single mom. She even threw in some guilt-trippy lines about how families should stick together no matter what. But you know what? I didn't budge. I calmly told her that this wasn't my responsibility. I reminded her that she's the one who made these choices, and it's up to her to face the consequences. I said I hoped she'd use this time to reflect and come out a better person, but that I wasn't going to bail her out, literally or figuratively. Then I hung up. Since that call, I've been dealing with a mix of emotions. Part of me feels guilty. I mean, she's still my mom, and I don't want her to suffer. But another part of me knows this is exactly what she needs. She spent her whole life avoiding accountability, and maybe this is the only way she'll finally take responsibility for her actions. I don't know what's going to happen with my mom. Maybe she'll finally hit rock bottom and make a real change. Or maybe she'll keep blaming everyone else for her problems. Either way, I've made peace with the fact that I can't save her. She has to want to save herself.